Hello everyone and welcome to a new episode of Youth Talk. English publications act as a bridge between cultures, providing Algerian youth with access to diverse perspectives and enriching experiences. In a country where Arabic and French are predominant, English books enhance personal development and critical thinking. Today we will explore the significance of English literature in the lives of Algerian students, examining how it shapes their identities and aspirations. Like we always do, I'd like to start by welcoming our guest, Amin Sheikhi. Welcome, Amin.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for accepting our invitation.
Absolutely.
So as I said in the beginning, today we'll be talking everything English literature and Algerian youth. Now, as a young Algerian man, you read a lot of English books, I imagine, and hence why you have perfected your English.
I do actually. I did spend a lot of time in my childhood reading a lot of English books, and I've always felt this deep interest for English literature of all sorts.
That's amazing. So let's start by how has studying English literature influenced your personal perspective, whether it is on Algeria or on the rest of the world?
Well, as I said, since a very young age, I've always been very passionate about English literature and books in English just in general. And I would say that books in English have really changed the way I've seen the world. English is obviously a more international language.
It is.
So it opens new perspectives on the world, and it gives us an insight on a lot of cultures that we would have never discovered if not for books.
Exactly. As you can see, maybe a lot of Algerian writers write about Algeria in English, and so does other authors from other parts of the world. And English unites them all under one umbrella, so you could have an insight on all of their cultures using one language.
Absolutely, I wouldn't have said it any better.
Exactly. So, I mean, would you say maybe in what ways English literature connects you to other cultures, whether it is here or globally? Because as you said in the beginning, you've read a lot of books since you were a child, so it has given you the chance to get to know a lot of cultures from different perspectives. Maybe the authors are from that land, maybe the authors have different views of the world than yourself, and it can all teach you a lot of things.
Absolutely. Since reading all of these books, I've connected a lot with different people as well, different pen friends and correspondents from all over the world. And to give you a sort of example, I was really passionate about James Joyce when I was younger, and Irish literature in particular, and that pushed me into learning the language of Irish, Gaelic. And I would have never even, considered doing such a thing if not for the incredible perspective that these books have given me. And, well, I do encourage every single other student in a similar case to mine to read as much as they can in English and to get a better understanding of the language in order to meet people all over the world.
So you've actually learned Irish?
Actually, yeah, well, I'm still doing progress and I'm still actively learning it, but I have a decent level in Gaelic.
All inspired from reading a book?
In great part, yes,
That's
indeed.
amazing. So, can you share with us maybe a few English literary works that have had a significant impact on you? As you told me in backstage that you are interested in the Irish culture and heritage. What inspired it? Maybe a certain specific book or author?
Well, as I said, Dubliners from James Joyce, as well as Ulysses. That is a description of a day, actually, the whole book. It's a massive, massive, massive piece of work, and it encompasses a single day, actually, which I think is absolutely astonishing as a literary piece of art, I would say. Well, as well as that, a certain book, if you want to still connect with Irish literature, that is called The Dream of the Celt, or the Celt, depending how you pronounce it. That is actually the biography of Roger Casement. That was an Irish revolutionary. I think we can, as Algerians as well, we can really relate with anti-colonialism and anti-imperialist struggle. And as well, I think, literature really connects you with every single culture in the whole world. And I really like Canadian literature as well. I wouldn't be able to give you right now on the top of my head specific examples, but I think it's really underrated and more people should look into it.
You know what you said about the about Algerians being able to maybe relate to Irish literature is very true, because when you look at the two countries or the two cultures from the outside perspective, you wouldn't think we have a lot of common with them, but we actually do. They support a lot of just causes. Absolutely. And they know what's it like to fight for your country, to break from colonialism. They are a very revolutionary people. So I think we can get along very well, and I understand your interest in their culture.
Totally. I think that their support for Palestine especially is a testament to how they think and how they behave. I have a funny story about that. In Lebanon currently, a lot of people that learned English learned it thanks to Irish peacekeepers on the border with the Zionist state.
Right.
And so a lot of them have Irish accents now today in Lebanon, and I think that's a wonderful story. But in addition to that, I think we can really relate to a lot of people that we wouldn't think to be anti-imperialists, such as Nigeria, such as South Africa, and all of that. And they all have this single banner of English that they can all, stand behind and kind of uphold in a way to launch their ideas to the world.
Exactly. Maybe from one book or two you can get to know the real true story of many other populations that we wouldn't have maybe thought of learning about before.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, that's amazing. So let's talk about language skills now. How has your engagement with English literature, you said that you've read a lot of books, has it helped you in improving your language skills? And do you think it made you more proficient in English? Because learning a language from a book could be very tricky because you don't actually read it out loud, so you're not actively speaking it, but you do know the words in your head, so it can be very weird. How did it help you with your English proficiency?
That is a great way to encompass it, actually. I learned English, surprisingly, not through books, but mostly through knowing people all over the world, right. Especially during COVID, because I was 12 at the time. I had a lot of time to waste. And
you were 12. That's
I was 12
amazing.
at the time, yes. But I didn't want all of that time to go to pure waste. So right. I spent a lot of it learning English. I was like, I have nothing to do. Might as well add a new language to my resume at some point. And then
for a 12-year-old, that's an amazing mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm glad I did back then, but. As you said, it's a bit tricky because you know how a word is written and then you don't really know how pronunciation is written.
Right.
And it still happens to me 5 years later to know a word, to know what it means, and to not know where to put the emphasis or where to put the accent or where And yeah, that never changes, but I think that's a beautiful part of learning the language.
So would you say that learning English from books can help you be book smart, and then you would actually have to socialize and have conversations with native English speakers, so you would be able to express yourself with these words that you have learned from the books?
Yeah, really. I think that learning a language through books is really hard, but then once you kind of get, you get the gist and you get it into your head, you have to interact with other people that were born into that culture and into that language.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So, I mean, what specific themes or maybe topics that you have found in English literature that resonated with your experience as an Algerian student or an Algerian living here, not abroad, and you're studying here? So maybe some books that you were able to relate to, or maybe some experiences that you have faced and you found them through books?
Well, I think that English as a language is a more expressive and it's the sort of vehicle to more abstract concepts than maybe French.
Right.
And I'd say that yes, especially growing up, I had the occasion to really relate deeply and onto several states with a few books. I would maybe mention what's his name again? All sorts of different authors that really resonated with me and that left a deep impact into my understanding of life in general, and a lot of them were in English.
Right, so a lot of people your age I've met recently, I noticed that they feel more comfortable expressing themselves in English rather in Arabic or in French. Why do you think is that?
I think that because Arabic and French tend to be too close to our own culture, and that despite really being advanced on a lot of spaces, we tend to see this sort of taboo, as in emotions and feelings and all that. And maybe English offers a kind of an exit door to that very stressful and very pressuring environment that a young Algerian might live in, and it offers a sort of it doesn't feel real. When you express your feelings in English, and then you go home and you talk to your parents in Arabic, and then you talk to your teachers in French, it doesn't feel real. So it's as if you're expressing something that you would not be allowed to express in any other language. That's how I feel it.
And so that's why you choose to express yourself in English?
I believe so. Well, it's not a conscious, endeavor, but it still happened.
It's an interesting thought. In one of the episodes, we had an English professor with us, Miss Asya Qasid. She teaches at the University of Bouzaria, so where there are a lot of English students, and she said that the students who are actually studying English literature have a different vibe about them. So they wear a certain type of clothes, they have a certain type of lifestyle, I would say, or maybe style in general, music taste, books that they have all in common. So would you say the English books or literature has influenced your way of living or your cultural background when it comes to music, clothes, these types of things?
Well, obviously, it's impossible not to be affected by a language that you speak, and especially a language that you speak so much, in my case.
Right.
And yeah, well, I do think that especially, university students in Algeria tend to be influenced by the kind of languages that they speak. Well, I'm not in university yet, I'm still in high school, but I believe that...
Soon, inshallah, soon.
Inshallah, yeah, absolutely. But in order to give an example, I have a good classmate, if I can mention her maybe.
Of course.
Amira Adnan, her name is. And she comes from a very, traditional family.
Right.
And she has an insane level of English. Is actually impressive, and I love how she kind of juggles with the two in her daily life, and it's really impressive, and I think she's a better example than I would be for that.
That's amazing. So let's go back to English books here in Algeria. You've told me that you have worked in libraries before, which is very impressive for someone your age. Would you say English books or English literature are accessible in Algerian bookstores or even public libraries here? Because there are a lot of libraries available at different universities or youth centers. Would you say English books or English literature per se is available and accessible there?
Well, as you said, I have indeed worked in a single bookstore that is L'Arbre à Dire on Sidi Yahya, that is very, very, very packed with English literature actually. And well, I think that now more than ever, English literature is accessible to Algerian young people. I don't know if you've heard recently, but the American Institute has opened a cultural center.
It did, yes.
It did, so that's a very, very great and cultural endeavor. There are plenty of books open to anyone there. And yeah, I think that bookstores and libraries are filling up with books in all sorts of languages, and English is obviously a great market. So for
it's always nice to see the diversity.
It is really
right.
good.
So what role would you say local bookstores play in promoting English literature? First, let's say maybe you were working one day at the store, and then some youth come in and they start checking out the books and they see that English books are available. Would you say it would influence their choice in what book would they purchase?
Absolutely. As recently as a few weeks ago, there was a middle-aged lady, not the particular type that you'd expect to speak English, that came in asking for a book in English. And we all thought, in all honesty, that it was for a daughter or for a son or for a nephew. Right. But it was actually for her, and she was trying to get into English. And she told us that she would have never gone into English if she hadn't seen that we had all these books available. So I do sincerely believe that it's a great door and a great portal to enter the language sphere of English. So absolutely.
So just making it accessible for everyone would encourage them to actually pick up a book in English and read it.
It would indeed. I think. Well, I have the perspective of an Algiers, young person, but I think all over the country, private and public, especially public libraries, should be really tasked with promoting books in all languages and especially English.
Now let's make note of this since we have the chance. A lot of public libraries do take donations. So guys, if you're watching this and you have a lot of books that you have read that are in English, of course, you could donate them to your local library, and this way you could maybe give the chance to someone else who can't afford these books to be able to read them, right, Emin?
Totally, I will do that myself.
That's amazing. I would expect you to donate some books. Okay, so we've talked about the libraries. Maybe have you participated in any events that are, book related or literary related? Have you had discussions focused on English literature maybe with your peers? Have you been involved in any sort of maybe book clubs?
Well, as recently as last month, I took part in this exact type of endeavors with your colleagues at Canal Algérie. They actually came at the bookstore and we discussed in great part books in all three languages, but we focused a lot on the ones in English, especially for children. And yeah, obviously we at school as well, you know, we discuss books in English. We encourage each other to read them. We lend them to each other, not really expecting to get them back ever.
I mean, I think I have given like 5 books this past month and I have gotten 0 back. So my friends who I gave my books to, please give them back.
Well, it's not the point. You know, it's always great to share with someone and to be able to give them a perspective into something that they might not have otherwise.
And maybe we can start promoting book club cultures, because it is a big thing abroad and it's not really a big thing here. Local, maybe book club.
Totally. I know that in my school, at Rafiq School in Tiqsarain, we do have a bookstore, a book club. What am I saying?
That's amazing.
Yeah, a book club, and that we all, you know, collectively keep full at all times so that anyone can access books in all 3 languages. And obviously, given my English literature background, I do my best to put as many English books as I possibly can. And I think it's absolutely wonderful to see the number of young people that are increasingly interested in the language and that go towards it maybe in an effort to divide and to cut, you know, themselves from the French, you know, omnipotent influence that has always been present in our society, and maybe looking for something more global and more, you know, intellectually achievable.
Stimulating too, yes. Actually, you know, we said that the French language being predominant here in Algeria is a direct cause of you know, colonialism, but you know, the Algerian state is making sure that English is being included in all curriculums, and now even at the university, inshallah, when you start, you'll be able to have the choice to study all your subjects in English. So that's what we do at the University of Algiers 3, where I study political science. You could pick if you want to study in Arabic or in English. So English now is actually being included not only in maybe curriculums or schools, but also in the work field as well. It's very encouraged to have a degree in English.
It is actually, and as you know, really recently I've had to work with a lot of foreigners, and I befriended a lot of them, and we strolled around Algiers, and the fact that everything was in English as well really gave them a different perspective on what Algeria was.
Exactly.
So a lot of them tend to think, oh, Algeria is just another French department, but it really isn't. We are our own country, or our own culture. We have our own deep history. And I think, you know, going as far as, you know, we had wars with the Americans. The first treaties we had ever were in English. Yes. So I think we should really, you know, strive to go back to these roots that we have that are deep within us, before colonization, before all of that. And yeah, so it's absolutely wonderful what the state has been doing recently for English.
It is amazing. So, I mean, in your opinion, what role does English literature play in shaping societal values and even norms in Algeria? As we mentioned, maybe when we talked about the university students, speaking English can maybe make you more subjective when it comes to choices that come from the American culture or the British culture, because we directly watch their shows and we understand their language. So we are influenced whether we want or not, maybe in our style, in our way of living, or maybe the norms that are, you know, societal values. How would you say the books specifically, not TV shows, could maybe influence us when it comes to these values?
Well, I would say that, well, talking about books specifically, that it's very important to differentiate English as a culture, as in the British culture, and English as a vessel, purely as an international language. So I think that it's really dangerous to be influenced by British culture. I think Britain is as dangerous as France when it comes to new imperialism, and well, the US as well, obviously. But I think we should really strive to keep English in our minds as only a vessel for...
As a tool.
As a tool, exactly, for all languages, and that we should not make the same mistake as we have made with French. That is to tie it closely to French culture and to everything that it stands for. So I think that it just so happens to be English that is the international language today.
If that was the case, we would be switching our croissants in the morning with sausages, as
no, with sausages or with pudding in the morning and tea. That would be absolutely awful. But you know, if maybe if France had won the 100 years, the 7 Years War in North America, maybe we would be, you know, talking about French as the international language.
Exactly.
It just so happens that Britain won it, so now British is the international language. But if it had been Spanish, Portuguese, or Irish,
it would have been the case.
It would have been the same thing. So I think we should be really, really careful not to be too influenced by Western culture in general and British culture particularly.
Of course, especially that we have our own rich culture, so we should maybe just stick to that.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
Right. So we have spoken now about maybe the influence the language can have on us. Do you see a future career related to English literature, maybe as a teacher or as a writer or a publisher, since you are very deeply interested in the book field here in Algeria?
Well, I would absolutely love to be able to share in some way my experiences of perhaps as a teacher, but I do not see myself doing this as a primary career. I think that English is going to play a pivotal role in my future life, and my professional life is going to be no different. But I would love to be a diplomat of some sorts. It's
That's
really
amazing.
my absolute dream, and I would love to represent my country all over the world. And I think that knowing English and knowing as many languages as one can really pushes you towards this path.
It's actually true. I've met quite a few, and they told me that they speak at least 4 languages, which is not hard for North Africans because we can pick up languages very fast and we don't have thick accents. So maybe that's an advantage you should use.
It is. It really is. And we have no accents. We have easier means of pronunciation.
Exactly.
There are plenty of sounds that are absolutely unthinkable for for French people to pronounce.
Right.
Something just to go back to what you were saying earlier about reading a word and not knowing how it's pronounced is to ask a French person how to say the word focus. And they can't. As much as they try to focus, it's impossible to say it for them. But I think that we have this this blessing. This is an absolute blessing to not have this thick accent, and it's unnoticeable when we're abroad. And so I think that's it's wonderful. It's really great.
Amazing. I mean, as a career choice, it's amazing to be a diplomat, especially if you can represent your country very well, if you're well cultured, if you're well read. That's amazing, and I wish you the best with that. So let's go back to Algerian literature. We have spoken a lot about English literature. Would you say maybe there are some similarities between the two, and or maybe notable differences that you have noticed from reading the both of them?
Well, I do think that English literature strives to be a sort of higher class literature, especially the more classic one,
right.
And that they tend to lean towards a sort of elitism that is maybe not done on purpose, but it's still there and it's impossible to ignore. Well, I think that on the opposite, on the contrary, Algerian literature is more of a popular theme, more of a popular thing, whatever the language. And that it's a great thing, it's perfect. We should not try to be like the British or like the Americans. Because for them, and maybe in all Western societies, reading has only become, a popular hobby pretty recently.
Recently, yeah.
Well, for us, it's always been the primary mean of of transmission, of transgenerational transmission.
Right.
We've always written, whether it be poetry, whether it be literature. And for them, it's pretty recent. So I think that there are notable differences between the two, and I think we should strive to protect them as well.
That's amazing. So, I mean, maybe has technology influenced your way of consuming books? Now we have ebooks, we have, online libraries, which is a good thing. You have spoken about the American Center opening recently, but I have also been included in the British Council, I think, library. They do have a digital library that you could access from your home. So that's a new thing. How would you say technology has influenced your experience when it comes to books and literature?
I think that it has had no notable impact on my own experience, but just to talk about people that might be around me pretty closely, and especially the ones at the bookstore, we tend to all have a very unified opinion when it comes to that, and that it has nothing to do with economical interest, but Daniel Pénac, French writer and philosopher, says that we should put the book at the service of the human and not the opposite. And I think that there's nothing better than a paper book, than something that you can touch, that you can feel, that you can really dive into.
It even has a smell.
It does, it really does. Nothing smells better than an old book that you find again from your childhood, or something that you inherited from your grandma, or something similar. And it does not surprise me that the colleagues back at the British Council would go towards that road, because as I said, it's always a vessel of imperialism. And you start to see my opinions on that.
It's crazy to hear a 17-year-old talking about imperialism. I'm so proud of you.
It really is, and the British Council is no different.
It is, of course.
It's no different.
So, Emin, I think we have covered everything for today's topic. I want to ask you for advice for everyone watching us today who want to be exploring English literature like you do. Maybe some book recommendations, maybe some advice to keep them going, maybe something that helped you to start reading the book and actually finish it.
Well, if I had to start by book recommendations, I would start by the opposite, actually. I would say do not read translated books.
Right.
Try to read English.
Original works.
Absolutely. Try to read books that were thought and written in English in the first place. So don't go towards anything, easy, as in, translations of Algerian books. Avoid that. There are plenty of easier
Original
English,
works, right.
pieces of work that are, I'd say, Arthur Conan Doyle. That is an absolutely massive author.
Yes.
And my personal favorite is obviously still going to be James Joyce. So if I could advise every single Algerian young person to read Ulysses or Dubliners, I would absolutely do it.
That's amazing. What about advice for maybe starting to read books and actually finish them, or maybe how to start exploring the right literature?
Well, in order to start a book and to finish it, it's always pretty hard to keep ourselves in the loop because we all have very different responsibilities all over the place. We have school for a lot of us, the university, and then work super quickly, and we don't have time for that.
Right.
But I'd say book clubs, as we mentioned it earlier, are a great way in order to get into that and to stay into it, because you are pushed by a sort of peer pressure, but in a positive way,
right,
to stay into that atmosphere and to stay into that feeling and to finish the book until the very last word and the very last sentence. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Amin Sheikhi, everyone. He was our guest today, a bright 17-year-old who talked to us about English literature and its impact on the Algerian youth. Thank you, everyone, for watching. See you in the next episode.